I didn't know what had gone wrong. And the point that you made too, you're like, well, things look pretty good. I'm like, I've got a great paying job. I've got a great family. Everybody's healthy. All these good things are happening to me. What is wrong with me? Why am I not happy?
Hi, everybody. So today I'm very excited to have Kristin Clark joining us. And Kristin is a seasoned marketing expert, Gallup certified strengths coach, mentor, public speaker, entrepreneur, and a commissioned artist. She ran corporate marketing departments for 20 years, and over the last 9 has been the most requested coach through Everwise, which is a professional mentoring company. Through these experiences, Kristin found her love for mentoring young people and founded Kristin Clark Coaching, and has been working with students to help guide them to determine the right college major or another path, and ultimately a career they love. She and her husband, Steve, have 2 sons, Chris, a college graduate from University of Alabama, and Matt, who's a senior at Oklahoma State. So go Pokies. Kristin really wants people to discover that they can do something they love, where they wake up every day and it's not work. So first of all, Kristin, welcome. And thank you so much for being here and spending your time with us.
Oh, Biba, thank you for inviting me. I mean, anytime that I get to talk about this subject, I'm all over it.
Awesome. Well, I'm so looking forward to our conversation. And let me tell you, when I was reading, your introduction, and, obviously I was preparing for it and looking at your website, I was just so impressed. And I was saying, wow, wow, wow. And can you share a little more about your journey here?
I can. In fact, as you said, I was in corporate America for, I say 20 years, but it was really 20 plus. Let's be honest with that. And I'll tell you, Biba, I got to a point where I just fell out of love with, I'll just say corporate right now for the conversation. And you got to know this beforehand. I love working. I started working when I was really young. Started scooping ice cream at Baskin Robbins. Before that, I babysat, but my first real job, and really found that I loved working more than school. That it was my happy place was at work. And fast forward to 20 plus years of corporate America, and I just got to a point where I hated going to work every day, and that obviously was not who I was. So I couldn't figure it out for a while, and I had closed down 2 companies due to buyouts, and I was in another company where, number one, I knew it wasn't a great fit, but I did it because I was fat, dumb, and happy and just let things keep going. And a new president came in, brought his team. Marketing's always the first to go. So I drove home with the biggest smile on my face that I didn't have to go back there. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And I will tell you, through the journey that I'll talk to you about, it wasn't their fault that I wasn't happy there. It ended up being mine. So after that, I got introduced to this lady that had just gotten certified to be a Clifton Strengths coach. So Gallup certified strengths coach. And you've heard of Clifton Strengths, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And I'll tell you a little bit more about your listeners about the Clifton Strengths program, but when she sat down with me and told me about Clifton Strengths, first she's like, have you ever heard of it? And I was like, no, but I love this kind of stuff. I was thinking astrology, personality test, and woohoo, yay, it's always fun. And I took the assessment, and it was funny when she opened up my report and she looked at it and she goes, oh,
That's not what you expected.
No, I was like, hold on a minute. That's, this is supposed to be fun. What are you going to tell me? And she went on to tell me, she's like, you scare people, don't you? And I was like, I do. And I have no idea why. I was like, it's just little old me, and I have no idea why I do. And she goes, well, let me tell you. And she went on to explain my strengths and how I was built and the things that I truly were amazing gifts that it just opened my eyes, and I was like, that is me. That's why I do the things I do. Oh my gosh, I need to know more. And it really just helped me put a language around the things that I'm good at. And I think that's the beauty of this program is it helps you articulate and the things that you are truly talented at
Mm-hmm.
in a way that just really helps you to recognize, number one, that they are gifts, and to be able to ask for more of those types of activities in your life so that you can continue to be who you authentically are and how you were born.
No, that makes so much sense. And I think when you can do that, right, it kind of informs you. So first of all, it sounds like you felt seen.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. Yes, I definitely felt seen. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was kind of like a coming home. Was that the first time that you had done a personality type of or your strengths kind of an assessment?
No, well, I had done Myers-Briggs, I had done DISC, I was a, purple, yellow, red, green, whatever I was,
Right.
there's the ones with the animals. So I had done all those because again, I always love hearing those things and having affirmation or reaffirmation of the things that I'm good at, right? Um, why I fell in love with Clifton Strengths is it provided a tool that I could actually do something with.
Okay.
So now that I know that I'm good at these things, I actually can choose to do more of them where I feel like, and this is a personal opinion, because I think all of the assessments have their place, but like for DISC, I'm like, great, I'm high I. So now what? What do I do with that?
Yeah.
It is just what I am. Okay. Now
Yeah,
what? Right?
exactly.
Yeah. So that's truly kind of the day that set me up for what I decided to do next, which was in a few months, I decided to get certified as a Gallup coach. And really, when I was thinking about this, I was like, okay, what are you going to do with it? Yay, that you love this.
Yeah.
You can do something with it. What is it going to be? And I got to tell you, having those years in corporate, I could have easily said, oh, I'm going to be a corporate coach and done a ton with that. And there are a lot of great coaches out there doing that. But when I kept going back in my mind and thinking about when would have it really made the most significant change in me, I kept going back to college where, and I remember this story, I remember this day vividly. I was standing on the college campus, and back then we had books that we looked through to figure out our classes, right? Which is totally dating me. And I was an art major, which was probably one of the best decisions I made in that I loved doing art. So I think it was probably really smart because it definitely interested me. I remember opening up that book and there was a class called something about interior design. And I was like, wow, what idiot does that? And I remember time just standing still around me. I was in the middle of campus, people walking by, just time stood still for about a minute. And then I remember closing that book, putting it in my backpack and going on with my day. And I was like, you know what? At that moment, had somebody said, hold on, let's talk about this. And what does that mean? I truly think today, knowing all my strengths, knowing all my interests, that I probably would be designing interior spaces for commercial buildings. I truly feel that way, but nobody was there to take my hand and go, don't discount this, stop in time, do something with it.
So what was that moment like when you said it was like time was stopping? Like what did you feel when you were reading the title of the class? You just felt like there was almost like your intuition or your gut talking to you?
I really think that's probably what it was, Baiba. I like how you put those words in it because the fact that time did stand still, like I had this immediate reaction to what that looked like. And in my head, I think I was thinking fluffy, oh, I'm going to go into somebody's house and do their interior design. And at the time growing up in Iowa, not a lot of people did that, by the way. It wasn't
Yeah.
like,
So you didn't see it as an example, right? It wasn't modeled as a successful possibility.
absolutely. And I wish, like I said at the time, somebody would have said, you don't know everything about interior design. Let's have a little bit bigger conversation,
Yeah.
right? And if it's something that's truly calling to you and touching your heart, you can do this. And, in my work with kids, it's so interesting because when we speak to what do you like to do and what excites you, what if, you could do something right now, there was no time constrictions, what would you decide to do?
Yeah.
Just in life, right? And a lot of 17-year-old boys want to play video games, which I'm like, hey guys, there are a lot of jobs in video gaming and a lot
Yeah,
of jobs in video. And they're like, well, hold on, Kristin, I can do something that I like. And I'm like,
but
somebody's got to do it. Why shouldn't it be you? And they're like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So I think it's, the biggest part is not only understanding yourself, but then realizing that, hey, you can have a job that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be drudgery or what's in that list of majors, right? You know how in college you get that list and they're like, well, I could be a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman, a
accountant,
policeman. Yeah. And I'm like, quit looking at that. The world is all of our oyster. And we have this opportunity to go, I love doing X. I think more now than ever.
Yeah.
I love this topic. What can I do with it?
Yeah. And I think I love that you brought it up. And I'm just like, oh my God, everything you're saying, I'm like, light bulb. And like, I'm so resonating with what you're saying. And I think it's so applicable, not only, it's so beautiful. First of all, how after the corporate career, right, where you find yourself with a strength finder, and now you're kind of connecting the dots backwards, right, on deciding on your path going forward, right, at that point. But it's also, I think this conversation is so applicable to somebody who is now further down the path, let's say has a few years, more than maybe even 10 of professional career, right? I'm sure you can relate, kind of partly as your journey has been. And just, she finds herself like there's something missing, right? That in the beginning, there was, you in the career, you were excited about the job, you liked it, you looked forward to going to it. But like you said, at some point of time, after a few years, there's just some kind of rumbling inside, right? This kind of pain or achiness or void. But then what do you do, right? What is the next steps that you would advise people? And it's probably the same what you're advising people, just even in college to take to kind of start crossing that bridge.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you what happened in my case. And I told you earlier that I was the one that made some bad decisions that made me not like my job. And I understood this better once I understood my strengths. Okay. And in the Clifton Strengths world, there are 34 themes that you're going to fall within. Okay. And within those 34 themes, they fall into 4 buckets.
Okay.
One, you're high in influencing, executing, strategic thinking.
Okay.
And what am I missing? Influencing, relationship building. Okay. And a lot of the personality tests kind of fall into those buckets. So this isn't anything truly new within that idea. But what I understood after getting my full 34 report is my true gifts fall within influencing people and building relationships. Okay. When I got promoted into my VP positions, I made this great, revelation to myself that I needed to be this strategic thinker. Well, guess what? That's not what brought me to the party. What brought me to the party is getting people to move fast or move towards a goal, better, faster, cheaper, efficiently, and, enjoying the journey. That's what I do well. Not let me come up with this wonderful idea that is, hanging out there. I don't see forward like some people do. I don't have this crystallization of here's a concept, let me do that. What I really enjoy and where my zone of genius is somebody has a vision and I'm like, okay, tell me more about that. And then I'm like, okay, now get out of my way. Let me grab all the people and we're going to get there. And it's not to say that it's probably going to be better than what they envisioned because I have the collective of all these people that I get to pull from. Mm-hmm. But that's why I loved my work before this time frame, before I got into this other company I told you about, because I got to do that every day. The beauty of it is, Baiva, is I had bosses that understood that and saw that in me and gave me projects that could utilize those strengths. So they saw it in me. I didn't see it in myself. So when I, again, got promoted in these VP positions, I put all my energy into trying to be strategic, and that's not how I'm built. So I actually got to a point where I was going to the doctor exhausted every day. I was like, something's wrong. I
Yeah.
don't know what's wrong with me, but something's wrong. And they kept doing the test going, Kristin, you're fine. Everything's perfect. What is your problem? There's nothing wrong. And then, then you start doubting yourself. You're like, oh my gosh, am I going crazy? What's going on here? So it really kind of touched every piece of my life in that
Yeah.
I just was so unhappy. And to your point earlier, I didn't understand why. It's like, and it happens so slowly. And
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of people in that position. I'm sure you talk to a lot of people that, have gone
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah. And you don't, and like you said, I think first you're like, well, I'm paid. I have a job, right? Things are not that bad. Like I have certain level of freedom. I've been with the company, all these things that we tell ourselves, but and then we don't understand why that feeling of dissatisfaction inside. So how many years did you feel like how many years did you spend in that more strategic kind of leadership role where you were more disconnected from actually what made you thrive?
About 5.
5 years.
Yeah, which is a crazy amount of time now that I look back.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back to, yeah, I didn't know what had gone wrong. And to the point that you made too, you're like, well, things look pretty good. I'm like, I've got a great paying job. I've got a great family. Everybody's healthy. All these good things are happening to me. What is wrong with me? Why am I not happy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the boxes are checked, right, from the external world, but you kind of like, and did that feeling grow inside of you?
Oh,
It's
sure. Yeah. It was just, and it, yeah, started to compound. And like I said, even to the point where I just physically didn't feel well.
yeah.
And that is, one of the benefits of working within your strengths is they energize you. They actually make you happy. It's that zone where you look down and you're like, it's 2 o'clock and I haven't even eaten lunch yet. It's because you were working within these talents that you're like, let's keep going. I'm having so much fun. Let's keep going.
I love that. So really, I mean, I think in knowing yourself, that's your power, right? That know yourself, and this is, that is truly your superpower, and then you can apply it and use it and direct your energy and your time in the right direction. So let's say you find yourself in that spot, right? So you were kind of forced. It sounds like the company, like there was either reduction or kind of reorganization, and then you were kind of you were not listening to that voice. Kind of, I think it's the Oprah says that the universe will talk to you in whispers, and then it will get louder with your health problems, right? And like you said, it's affecting now other areas of your life, right? And how, let's say you find yourself with those whispers or knocks, or it might be even stronger. What is the next best thing to do? Is it to take the Strength Finder test?
Of course, I'm always going to vote for that because
Yeah.
I gained so much from it, and the whole idea too of the universe kind of whispering,
Mhm.
it really is listening to those whispers. And let's face it, I was afraid. I was afraid. It's like, why am I trying to rock this boat? And I know I want to rock the boat, but I don't know how to rock the boat. I don't know what to do. Um, and I love that the universe kind of pushed me out the door and just said, you got to go, you
Well,
know?
yeah, if
Um,
you're not going on your own.
well, and it's, I get this question when I'm speaking to this in a corporate environment. They're like, but Kristin, you were a VP. How would you ever explain to your boss that you're not a strategic thinker?
Right.
And yeah, and I was like, you know what? It's a fair and a good question. But the reality is, I got moved into these positions. I had past successes, and how I was good at my job was doing these things, right? Um, I think it's really, again, having that power of the language of, but here's what I bring to the table. And everybody has to surround themselves with people that have different talents, because we can't all do it all, right? We can't all be the strategic thinker and the executor and the relationship builder and the influencer. We can't all do that. And, people that, one of the things that I see people kind of discount how amazing these gifts are that they bring to the table, because they're like, well, everybody thinks like this. Everybody does it this way.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the biggest learning is, you are so unique, and the way you think brings so much to the table. It's just making sure we get you in the right place so that you can just soar. and, just be who you are and do what you do so well. And I think if people got more comfortable, Viva, on acknowledging the things they're not good at and
Mm,
going, but you know what? I've got my buddy Ron over here that's super good at this. So I'm going to bring him in when I have those things that I need to be strategic about. I've got my buddy over on this side that loves executing. Like, to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I hate that part.
mhm.
But they love it. So why not honor their skills and ask them to come in and do that for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a combination of knowing, right, what you're good at. And then, so it's like Strengths Finder, it sounds like it really helps you to shine the light, right? Where you're not just kind of taking your strengths for granted or kind of vaguely are aware of them, but really shine the light. And then you can take that and start using them more and more. So what would you say, if somebody's resonating with this, right, is finding themselves in that position where they're just not sure they're successful, but they really don't know like what is the next best step to take to get to that position where they're looking forward to Mondays versus dreading Mondays. What is the best way to take the test? I think you used to have to buy a book with a code, or kind of how to get
Yes.
the results.
The great thing is, as you know, now everything's online, so it's
Yep.
instantaneous. You can go to Gallup.com
Okay.
and take the assessment. You can take it through my website. There's many places you can find it, but fast path to cash on this thing is go to Gallup.com, take the assessment. And I will tell you, it's like any other assessment in that you can get it, you can read it like it says in astrology, and it's going to hit you. They're going to say things in there that you're like, that is me. Oh my gosh, but really having somebody take you through it and answering and having the conversation back and forth about what those strengths truly mean, I think is a really important step, because it's almost like when they get that report, it's like, welcome to kindergarten. Okay. The kindergarten of Biba.
Yeah.
And understanding who you are and how those strengths play out. Because I can tell you, I still listen to different podcasts through the Gallup organization about my strengths. And I'm like, yes, just something new will always hit. You can put it in context because you're living a life, and you're seeing some of these things play out. So you truly understand how those strengths come up in you. And here's kind of a fun fact and why it supports this. All of your strengths start working together. And like anything that compounds, you're right, it's going to be different for you versus me, and how that strength works, right? Because you've got other strengths around it. And so really understanding that and having the right questions asked so that you can dig a little bit deeper is really helpful. And I would say too, I want to make sure people realize, like for me, getting kicked out of my job was a great shove, and I was happy that it happened. However, had I understood this, I could have made an adjustment to my job. It doesn't always mean you have to, go in a completely different direction. Sometimes it's just tweaks.
Yeah, and that's so good, because this is, when I talk to people, is that it's not always that you need to get a new job, get a new company, find a new boss. And sometimes it's appropriate, but many times this knowing yourself really is a power, because you could make your current job or your current company your dream job. So it really comes back to how well you know yourself and your strengths, and then how well are you able to apply them. So let's say, so do you do, so you said on your website, Kristin Clark Coaching, there's an assessment test like that walks through a number of questions? Is that how?
Yes. Yeah. And it's just for everybody to know, I do some corporate work with my Clifton Strengths as well, and I've got a student page. So all of that stuff's under my student page, but anybody can take that. It's the same assessment for 16-year-olds on up. Yeah. And there's two options too, Biba, that, for people that are kind of going, I'm buying what you're selling, but I'm not buying the whole package. You
Okay.
can buy a report that just gives you your top 5 strengths so that you can kind of absorb it in a little bit smaller package.
Yeah.
Or you can get your full 34. And I love it. I recommend everybody not only understanding your top strengths, and your top 5 are typically your signature strengths, but people really like use their top 10 throughout their daily life. But I think it's also powerful to understand your non-strengths, those things
Yeah.
that you're not good at, because that's where I got my huge aha moment on the whole strategic thing, where I was like, oh my gosh, all these strategic skills are at the bottom. I need a partner in crime, to take those on. That's not my zone of genius. And I just need to understand that and walk away. And quite honestly, when I figured that out, it's kind of a monkey off my back. I went, I'm not good at it. Embrace it,
Yeah.
run with it.
Yeah. Oh, that is resonating with me so much, because what you can do then, whether you're evaluating opportunities, inside your organization, right? Different ones, because you don't know whether you need to make a change, to a different department, or maybe need to leave the company. But either way, it can inform you, right? To make a decision whether that next job is right for you, right?
Oh, for sure. And it also gives you an opportunity, Biba, to very, very succinctly tell somebody that you're interviewing with what you're truly good at, because what happens in those situations. They're like, oh, we need that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make sure I'm putting them in that role, right? So you're in really speaking to, what do I really do well?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I love about this is that, you always get that question in an interview, that it's, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses?
Right.
And this truly gives you the answer to
Yeah.
that. And even, like for me, you can spin doctor this a little bit too, that, my weakness is I'm high activator. It means I have a need for speed. I don't need all the directions. I just want to go. And it's okay for me personally to take the risk of making mistakes, because I course correct, and I'm okay with that. Other people around me might not be, but I'm okay with that. So I speak to that and I say, I purposefully put people around me that will question my next step, because I know sometimes I can get moving too fast, right? That's my weakness. It's
That's
my
good.
strength and it's my weakness. But you hear how powerful that is to be able to say, hey, I recognize it. Here's where it benefits you, because I'm fast and I get things done. But here's where I need help, but I recognize it. So it just gives you those answers. It's so much fun. I
Yeah,
just love this program.
that can truly take you, like, put you at another level, right?
Yes, because when I have my students do this, I have them put together what I call a strength script, which is just that. It's, why should I hire you? And they have to answer the question. They have to give me an example. And it's so funny because they hate this. They hate the when I have them do that exercise. But they've also told me, but it really made me think, and I can see how I can use this moving forward. They hated it because it was hard to come up with the examples, but they understood the value of being able to explain it. But yeah, it's hugely powerful. And I will tell you, anybody that has done an interview with one of my students, they walk away and they're like, what an awesome kid. How impressive are they? And it's really just because they understand who they are and they can articulate that.
Yeah. And how lucky are they, to have it at whatever age, right? Whether it's in college or, even some in high school, but like, how much does that set you up for success and start creating, and have all these years to create something that you're really good at, right? Passionate, where, kind of your strengths and superpowers blend with kind of what you're doing versus,
And
finding path.
quite honestly, I think so few people are good at articulating that. If you're 45, if you're 60, walking into an interview and being able to speak
Yeah.
that way, I think is hugely impressive.
Yeah, so you can turn it around starting right now. So let's say, so what is the next level? You said you can take the test, right? And you get your top 5, right? Or you can get all of the ranking of all of your strengths, and, in in an order of like the strongest and downwards. But so what is the next level? Do you offer like a series, some kind of guidance program where you teach people how to integrate it more and how they can actually start implementing once they kind of, like you said, arrived at the kindergarten level and kind of know now what their top strengths are?
Yeah. So what that typically looks like is I do have packages where we can meet 3 times. And a lot of times people will come to me with this situation, right? That they're, Kristin, I don't even like what I'm doing anymore. I don't know why. Or a job transition, a lot of times where they're like, I really didn't like what I was doing before. And now I'm finding myself looking for a job. How can I use this to find something that's a better fit? So
Yeah.
it's really coming in with that. And we start there. And a lot of times people after 3 sessions, they're like, okay, I get it. Especially just for that one task. A lot of times we all need a task or a journey to say, okay, I want to start and finish something. So we do work through that whole idea of what type of work is going to fulfill you and make you
Yeah.
happy. And how do you ask for that? And I do have my adults do the strength script as well. And, past that, it's really about, embracing this and continuing that journey, which I do offer those services as well, that we might touch base once a month and go through that. But there was one other thing I wanted to tell you about that. What was it? I do also offer workshops for groups of people. So if people have like a group setting that they'd like to do a workshop, I do that. Oh, I know, I was going to tell you, a lot of times I'll also have partnerships.
Okay.
That, let's say you're in business with somebody and it might be a great relationship, it might be not so great of a relationship, to come together and to really dig into and understand how each other are built, so that not only division of workload you can figure out by doing this. So if you've got somebody that's high in executing and somebody that's low in executing, the one that's low in executing is always going, oh, I hate that job, so I hate passing it off to you. When that other person's going, but I love that stuff. And a lot of times it doesn't come out until they have this conversation and they're like, wait, you like doing that? And they're like, yeah, I do. I'm good at it. I enjoy it. And so it opens up again, this language that people can use to get better at, how do we serve each other better? How do we make our business partnership better? How do we make our marriage better because we know each other better? So, and then I also do family strength sessions that are a ton of fun. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, because it really affects all of your areas, right, of your life and relationships.
It is. And it applies in so many ways, shapes, and forms that, it's really trying to look at your life and go, which area of it do I really want to affect and make a change? And there's a answer for that in understanding your strengths.
Yeah, no, totally. So let's go back to, okay. So first of all, what you're saying is like you can take the test either on Gallup or your website, right? And then you offer either, you get the report, right, with the results, or then you do individual coaching kind of to get more, more individualized and tailored and more information how to actually implement those. So for the purposes of the conversation, how, like, let's say I take the test and I think many people probably who are listening have taken strength finders because it used to be so popular, companies would buy the book, and then, okay, here we are, the whole team is doing it. I even retrieved my
Oh, did you? Good.
my results. And I'm like, but there's that disconnect. What do I do now? Like, what are some of the simple steps, like if you're feeling like something's missing? So what do you do now?
Yes. And I will tell you, that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see companies making, in that they're like, here's the book.
Yeah.
Let's have one workshop on it and now go, make it happen. And, and it is a journey like anything, that you need to grow in that journey. The really cool thing about Gallup is they, and to answer your question, I think it's at about 26 million, and my number might be a little bit low because I haven't looked on the website lately to see that number, but about 26 million people have taken this assessment over the last 50 years. This thing has been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And in fact, a really cool story, the gentleman that started Clifton Strengths was Don Clifton. And he went to college to become a psychologist. And so he went, took all the courses and realized that all the great people out there in psychiatry and in that field kept wanting to look at what was wrong with people and try to fix it. And he was really one of the first people to say, well, hold on a minute. What if we looked at what was right with people? Then what could happen? And so they do call him the father of positive psychology. He's then I don't know how he hooked up with Gallup, to be honest with you, but they basically got a team out there to look at all the different ways that successful people, how they got that success and what was their strength. Okay. And they narrowed that down to these 34 things that we're talking about. So a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of science. I mean, they're definitely the smart people, much smarter than I am, went and put all this together to understand it better. So fast forward, 50 years, you've now got coaches throughout the country, throughout the world, actually helping people understand this and integrating this into companies. We've got, 400 of the top 500 companies in the country that are using this. You've got 500 out of the 5,000 out of the 6,000 colleges in the country actually presenting this program to people. It's the companies that really spend the time and continue the learning and education around it that thrive. And here's kind of an interesting fact that I think would probably surprise a lot of people. And that is, when you look at all the people working throughout the United States, we've got about 30% of those people that are engaged in their work. So translate that. The flip side is you've got 70% of your workers. So if you've got employees right now in a company that you're working with, about 70% of those people are truly not engaged in their work.
No matter what the engagement surveys say.
What?
No matter each company does their own engagement surveys usually, and usually those numbers are better.
For sure they are, right?
Sad. Yeah, that's probably so true, because it's reflected also what's going on right now, the Great Resignation.
And actually, so those numbers, that 30% has actually been pretty consistent for the last, I want to say it's about 10 years. And last year it did drop, which is not a big surprise, right? I think the engagement number dropped down to about 27% the last time I looked on some of the reports that Gallup puts out. But you think about that, when you think about the amount of time people spend at work, and for them not to be engaged and happy and just joyful that they get to go there and do that every day, that's a terrible life to live. And I've lived part of that, so I get it. I hated going in on Mondays in my last job, right? But throughout my career, I loved going to work. So, you look at that and you go, guys, we've got to get better at this. We can't, and you really have to do it for yourself. I don't know that you can really rely on anybody else doing this for you. And I think that's the power of this too, is you can do it for yourself.
Oh my God. Yes. You're speaking to my heart. And it's like, yes, you have to take the power here, start with yourself, because I think there's this want to rely on the company, right, to make you happy, or the company to take care of you or provide you the opportunities. But sometimes they're just not equipped. I think so many times what happens is that companies, okay, the team is excited to do the strength finders, right? We find out what our strengths are, but there's really not like a certified guide or coach, right? It's somebody on the team, like as an HR member or somebody, the kind of, read a bit more and is interpreting, and then it's left, right? So let's say if you've taken the test and you learn that you are, like, for example, for me, I learned that I'm a learner, achiever, then responsibility, input, and intellection.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's say you learn your 5 themes or 5 top strengths, and okay, you're in your job and something's not working. Something's not quite like where you're looking forward to Mondays.
Yeah. So for you, you're actually a really good opposite of me in that your 3 of your top 5 strengths are in those strategic areas, right? Your learner, your input, and your intellection. And then you've got 2 that are in the executing. which is your achiever and your responsibility. But let's give people that are listening a little bit of a flavor of what those mean.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Those are the
So
buckets you were referring to earlier, right?
these are, so the top five are five of the 34 themes.
Okay.
Your strategic and executing are domains. So some fall into each of those, right?
Okay.
So people that I'll pick achiever first, because that's actually the number one strength that is typically in somebody's top five. So this will probably resonate with a lot of people.
Okay.
And that is people that are high in achiever love to make lists. They typically always have a list by them, if not several. Depends on the person, if that's online, on paper, and it depends on the person if that's, like, I fill in triangles. I'm not, high achievers about 13 for me, but I do pull from it. I do triangles and I color them in when it's done. Some
Okay.
people cross out, what do you do?
I probably do, yeah, like to make lists. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing, it's what's interesting about an achiever is they kind of start the day at 0 and they have to do a certain amount of things for them to feel like their day was a success. So they just love getting stuff done. And typically they like getting stuff done personally. It doesn't mean personally versus work. It means like as a individual contributor
Okay.
that they enjoy just knocking stuff off the list. Okay. Now, keep in mind, I said individual and contributor. If you've got other strengths around you that are more people-based and more
Okay.
relationship-based, that may look different for you. So it's all dependent on all the strengths that you have around it. But it still is, I got to get a certain amount of things done before I feel that, swell up of happiness that I achieved today. Does that make sense to you?
Totally, because even more so than the list, it's like there's always something that needs to be done that's like speaking to you loudly. And then it's like even Saturday or Sunday, you're like, if you haven't achieved something, then it's like you're a loser. There's something missing.
It is. And it's so funny because people that are not high achievers, a lot of times they'll look at you and they're like, why don't you sit down? Why don't you relax? And you're like, this is relaxing to me. I
Yeah.
enjoy this. It gives me energy. It fills my cup, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're saying, no, this is awesome. So you're saying kind of knowing your strength, but this is, I guess, where the deeper interpretation helps is you're saying that there's like the dependencies or it's not just as simple as, okay, now I know these 5 things, but they're kind of the different combinations which would inform. How would it inform what do you do now, how you structure or what you change maybe in your current job?
Well, so if let's say I've got a client that she's high achiever
Okay.
and high responsibility, by the way, which is one of yours, and she runs the department. Her expectation is, or the way she runs that department is, it's always adding to the list. It's always more and more and more and more and more. And what happened over time is her employees got burnt out because that's not necessarily the way they were built, right? So it was her understanding, her love of getting the check marks done that was, she projected onto her staff because the more they checked off, the more she checked off, made her feel good, didn't necessarily make them feel good. So understanding that for her, she was also high in communication. So we really talked about, okay, you need to bring your communication forward, be speaking to people, asking them, telling them what you're trying to get accomplished, asking them their best way to make that happen, and really kind of bringing those to light so that it wasn't just a do, which didn't serve either of them at the end, right? And by doing that, by having those conversations, it actually made people work harder for her.
Okay.
Because they understood better, because they started enjoying their job better, right? When she started understanding that her strengths were not their strengths. So that's just one example, of how when you better understand this, then you can, work with a team. I'll give you another really important one, or one that is, I think, easy for people to understand. And that is people that are high in competition. So people that are high in competition just like winning.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't win, they're not excited. And if they don't think they can win, they probably won't take on the task. Okay.
Right.
So they like to win. I've seen this in sales where you've got a guy that likes to win that is working with a team of salespeople. And he's like, so we're putting together a contest. I can tell you personally, Biba, that's so not important to me to win a prize. You know, in my mind, it's give me the most important thing that you want done, because that's what's going to satisfy me and keep me excited about working. Right. So it's understanding yourself and how you're built, and, you know, that he gets excited by that. But there's his influence on the team would have been, how do I serve you best? Because we're going to win because you're doing the, you know, the things that you do well.
Mm-hmm.
So in a team environment, I think that's helpful. Let me take another one of yours. Intellection. So people that are high in intellection just love to have those deep conversations about a topic. They like peeling back the onion and going, but why? What does that look like? Why would we do it that way versus this way? Does that, I see you smiling.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, for you, I think it's important, especially anybody that's high in the strategic domain in particular, for you to take out time in your day and just schedule time to think, because for you, thinking is doing. Thinking's important for you. It energizes you. And that's just as important as getting stuff done in a lot of cases. You know, if, like I said, I'm low in strategic. So when I know that somebody's off thinking about the next thing, that's important for me, because then they can give me the vision and I can run at it with all my team and make it happen. So it's important for you to take that time out and schedule time to just think and be okay with that.
Okay. That's empowering, and that's awesome to know, because it's like one of the, you know, partly when I work with people, I'm also like, my big thing is like your vision. Do you have a career vision? So that makes some complete sense.
Yeah. And have you had people say, yeah, not really? I don't know.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah.
Yes. And the beauty, yes. And they don't, you know, it's not that they haven't put thought to it. It's like, they probably put a lot of thought to it, but that's not something that they're truly talented at. And that's why they're reaching out to somebody like you, right? They want somebody to help them formulate this. And yeah, so I mean, you can see how powerful this is.
Yeah, I can see the value of really kind of the taking the test, right? Taking or getting to your results, but really, you really need a guide like yourself, you know, to orient you better to understand the dependencies, kind of how it's like a puzzle piece, right? How your strengths kind of fit together. And that will, I think, give answers. Like if you're, when you feel this kind of feeling that something's missing, right? Of how you can start maybe playing around even with one thing, like you're telling me to build in time for thinking, right? If somebody has that as a strength, right? To build in that time either every day or every week, right? To start, because it's not like you will probably turn it around right away, but at least you're starting to try, right? And take the, you know, small steps, one step at a
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah. And even you, like when you said, wow, that's empowering, you know, for me to schedule time to sit back and think, I would be all fidgety and I wouldn't know what to do with myself. That's not how I would be best suited to work. You know, for me, action is how I learn things. So I don't learn in my mind, I learn by doing. And so you know, for me, it's important that I'm in motion. So a lot of times my thinking is when I'm out walking, you know, where I can be talking with somebody. I usually have people that I walk with that help me with business problems or personal problems, depending on who I'm walking with.
Yeah.
That action actually helps me absorb and learn and interact with things. That just makes me remember it. It gets my mind moving. So yeah, it's very different depending on, on how you're built. And it's, what I find interesting is you've asked me this question several times and I haven't answered this question for you. And I'm realizing that because you keep pulling me back in on how to learn more about it. But what's interesting is think about what I said, how you're built with the achiever and the list and having, and the structure of you trying to formulate in your mind how this all works together.
Yeah.
You wanted those steps. Kristin, how do we get there?
Yeah.
And I keep evading you. So I'm going to answer that question for you.
You're awesome.
There are some really great tools. Gallup, as I started saying before, and I just got off track, is really good at providing tools around each of these strengths. Before I even got certified, I watched hours and hours and hours of the Gallup folks talking about each strength. And they're called Theme Thursday, and they're out there for anybody to access. They're if you just type in Theme Thursday on YouTube or whatever your podcast something is that you enjoy listening to, they're there. And you can go in and say, okay, tell me everything about Learner. And there's 6 seasons at this point. So the early seasons, they went for about 40, 45 minutes. And you're like, really? How can you talk about these strengths for that long? Guess what? They can. And it's so cool because they easily fill that time. And every season is actually different. They started talking about teams and how to use it in teams. They talked about work more than personal on one whole season. So there's such a treasure trove of knowledge just in that. And in fact, I walked into my certification, took, all my tests, and they're like, how you're really good at this. I'm like, I've listened to this like incessantly. So, so you can learn a lot even by just listening to those tapes.
Okay. Theme Thursday. Is that what it's called? Theme Thursday? Okay. And it's on YouTube or podcast? It's a
podcast. Yeah. They're all over.
That's awesome. So, what I'm hearing really, it doesn't matter, right? If you're lucky enough that you had somebody like yourself, right? A mentor, and you figured it out before, starting your professional career. But I think, let's face it, I think that's not most of us, and that it's really never too late. And you're really a shining example, right? I mean, you have had a successful corporate career, and then you pivoted. So what would you say, what would be your biggest advice, when somebody finds themselves, right, and in that situation where the fulfillment is missing, just they have that voice speaking to them?
Yes, it's really taking action. I'd say it's taking action right now for anybody, because you don't have to have a bad job to be able to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
You can have an awesome job that you completely enjoy. And by understanding yourself a little bit better, not only helping yourself at work, because there's always these little tweaks where you go, oh, you know what? I don't enjoy that activity as much as some of these others. Now I know why. And now you have the voice to be able to go to whoever is above you and say, I want more of this. This is where I really shine. This is where you're going to get the best me. And let me tell you why. So there's this huge power in that. And I'd say at home as well. I live with people that are high in adaptability, which means when I bring up, what are we going to do tomorrow? They're like, oh my gosh, why are you ruining today by talking about tomorrow? And I'm like, but how do I know how to use my arranger, my activator, if I don't know what's going on tomorrow?
Yeah.
So, I've learned in my family to go, hey, you know what? In 3 hours, there's a movie. Does everybody want to go? And they love that because it's for the moment. And that's what they do well, is, jumping to and adapting. So by understanding each other like that, mm-hmm. It's really kind of cool, because now we have less, when I'm activating, when I'm like have a need for speed and a need for movement, and the whole family's watching TV, they'll go, Mom, you're overactivating. And I'll go, you know what? You're right. I am overactivating.
I love that.
And for me now, I know to tell myself, your activity right now needs to be to spend time with the family and to watch TV with them and be a part of what they're doing. So now I can rearrange my strengths to say, it's time to do this, right? So there's so many ways that you can impact your life and just make it happier.
Yeah. and it counts, right? It still counts as an activity and it's a check.
Yes.
And
And for you,
everybody's more
yes.
harmonious.
I would tell you if we were in a coaching session and you're like, I just can't get enough done on Saturdays. I'm like, okay, let me give you a couple of things to put on your list. Hang out with your family,
Yeah,
call your mom,
yeah,
and add those things to your list. And it counts towards your bucket of I'm getting stuff done.
it's good enough, right?
And it's good enough. Well, that's funny you say that because with you being high in responsibility,
Yeah,
you like things done right. And
yeah,
sometimes 100% isn't even as right as you'd like it. And you're right. Sometimes 80% is enough because nobody else cares.
yeah. And oh boy, can you make a hell for others?
You can, I know, because they're like, is
You're
she really
right.
going to keep beating this dead horse? And you're like, yes, I am, because it's not perfect yet. Yeah.
No, so it's really the knowing yourself and then knowing how to work better and get more, even get more out of, I don't know if it's the right way to say it, really like most of others, but in a way, right, that works for everybody and hopefully injects more fun and enthusiasm along the way and more joy. And I think also another thing that you mentioned about shame is that when you are, let's say, in a leadership position, right, but inside you feel like, okay, you are doing a big part of your responsibility as you see it, it's like it's something that's not aligned to your strength, but you feel like, oh my god, I can't go to my boss and say it because like what will they demote me, right? If like, but this comes like these presentations or these strategy aspects come along with my VP title, right? Like, but this gives you so much more of, like, it's much more of an empowering language and way, I think, to have these conversations and to problem solve and yeah, actually drive change in an empowered way.
Yes. And I would tell you, like, if I had to look back and say, okay, well, how would have I dealt with that now
Yeah.
knowing what I know? You know what? I could have gone out and hired a business coach that is strong in that strategic side, that I could have those conversations. I could have gone to my boss and said, I need a strategic business coach because that's not my claim to fame, but
Mm-hmm.
here's what you are getting from me. And, people use business coaches all the time
Mm-hmm.
for these reasons because some leaders are not good on the people side. We've seen those people too, right?
Oh
And
yeah, every
for a yes, we have. And to have a business coach to go, okay, hold on, Biba. I know that you said this and this was your intention, but how are we going to handle that? And just to help you think about those things that you're not good at. And they might point them out so you can execute those, you can make them happen, but you
Mhm.
wouldn't have thought of them because that's not your normal, natural way of thinking. That's not your first priority. Your first priority are the things that you know how to do and that you're good at. And that's how everybody thinks, right? They
Yeah.
don't. Yeah. So you can see how too, now you can make that choice to say, who do I need to put on my team? Who do I need to be next to? Who do I need to walk with? Who do
Mhm.
I need as an accountability partner? Because if they have different strengths than I do, then they're making me better.
Yeah, and it will come together so even like so magically, and so I mean you will, whatever you're there creating together, right, it will be just at a different level than you just walking and trying to do it on your own. And it will feel better and more fun. Let me ask you this. Can you share a success story or an example of somebody, in their career, kind of something being off, and then after they learned about the strengths and, kind of application of them?
Absolutely. So I was working with a team
Mm-hmm.
that they'd been working together for 8 years, and it was two ladies that work helping people brand their business. And they were working on a new project. So it wasn't like they had been doing the same type of work for a long time and then decided to add something to this business, right? And they started to butt heads a little bit. And part of it was not understanding their strengths. One person high in, but basically, what the strengths is all about is that you are easily able to find the things that are going wrong, and the joy comes from wanting to fix those.
Okay.
Okay. And what her partner always heard was everything's wrong. Everything's wrong.
Sounds like
Everything's
a
wrong.
perfectionist.
It was, yes, it was, you know, that she was kind of in that mode of, yes, it's, she keeps seeing these breaks, these
Yep.
things aren't right.
Yep.
And her partner was high activator. So she'd jump on because when there's a shiny object, people high in activator want to jump on it and get it done right away. That she, you know, would jump on it, but then it was always, she kept getting this message back that it's never good enough.
Mm.
Right. So it was kind of making a rift in the partnership.
Yeah.
Once we worked through that and understood where things were getting off course, the lady that was finding the problems, it's restorative, by the way, she's high in restorative, that she, you know, kind of went, but Kristin, I can't stop seeing the breaks. Right. But what we talked through is that's great, but 80% sometimes is good enough. 80% can be good enough. Kind of what I'm telling you about responsibility,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if you want to do that on your own time because it makes you feel better, that's okay, right? So now when they get to those situations, they're actually able to speak to it and nobody gets mad. They're
Mm.
just like, oh, we're kind of in one of those spots where I'm feeling like nothing I do is good enough, and they work through it. And there's countless stories, countless of that. Do you have time for one more quick story?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I was working with a girl. She got through college. She went to University of Arizona, got her degree in accounting, and she got a really awesome job in Arizona at one of the top accounting firms. And her mom called me. She had quit her job after 4 months. And I said, Taylor, what happened? What went wrong? And she goes, Kristin, I hated every minute of it.
Wow.
I hated everything I was doing. It wasn't a good fit, and I'm a failure. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, girlfriend, you're not a failure. You just found something you didn't want to do,
Yeah.
right? And it wasn't good for you. So when we got talking about not only her strengths, but about the things that she loves, she's like, you know, I said, what are the things you love? And she said, oh, I love music and I love singing. And I was like, that's awesome. Are you a good singer? And she's like, oh, no, I'm not a good singer at all. And I was like, okay, Taylor, let's talk about something that, you know, we could do with this. But she ended up saying, I really am intrigued by the human body. And I said, that's awesome. So what does that look like? So we had more discussions around that. Then we talked about her strengths and why accounting, it was very easy to figure out why accounting was not her jam,
Mhm.
because all of her strengths were really around people and understanding people, having empathy where she totally felt other people's emotions. It wasn't in doing things that you had to, you know, follow the rules. She really was more of a, you know, work in the moment type person. So I was like, okay, we understand why accounting wasn't right. And now she's working at getting her physical therapy license. And at 28 years old, she'll have all of that completed.
Mhm.
Go back to starting this a little bit earlier. And it's like by doing that, if had she done this work before she went to college or while she was in those first years of college, she'd be out and working in that field already instead of going through 4 years of, by the way, studying something that wasn't interesting to her. She
Yeah.
was not good at math. She didn't enjoy accounting at all. Getting through a 4-year curriculum that pretty much sucked for her,
Yeah.
you know, where it wasn't exciting, it wasn't fun. Getting that job that she felt like the failure, which I again can relate to because during those 5 years that I talked about, I felt like a failure. So I totally understood where she was at. But then getting to this spot where she can't wait to get up in the morning to go to her classes because she's in love with what she's doing and they totally fit her strengths. I mean, it's just night and day what can
Mhm.
happen when you really are introspective about what's going to bring joy to you and then understanding how you're built and how they go together.
I love that. I love that. So it sounds like one of the exercises you kind of walk through also with your clients is reflecting on what you enjoy, what you're passionate about, and what's kind
Yes. And yes, the answer is yes. I always shy away from passionate because I think people get afraid of that word. because it sounds so monumental, right? And I always look at it and I go, I don't know that I'm super passionate personally about anything. And everybody is, but it's hard to say, it just feels like a lofty word.
Okay.
But yes, we speak to that. And especially with the younger kids, we talk more about, what do you enjoy doing?
Yeah.
What do you do when nobody's looking?
Yeah.
And, or if you had all the time in the world, what would you do? And that usually leads down the path. I just spoke to one of my clients, and the whole time he's like, Kristin, I just don't know. I just don't know what I want to do. And we got talking about sports, and but he leaned in, his voice got higher, his face got animated. And I was like, why are you not doing something in sports? And he's like, well, I'm not necessarily good at sports. I'm like, you don't have to be good at sports. There are 1,200 jobs that are connected to sports that you don't have to put on a uniform.
Yeah.
I'm like, so if you're around that activity and you love it, wouldn't that be fun? And he goes, that'd be really fun. So, it's like, it doesn't have to be this monumental thing, right? I love art. If I'm around art, it makes me happy. So it's really just kind of finding those little nuggets, and it doesn't take long. You'd be surprised how fast people will hit on something, and you're like, yeah, I just saw you like it. Your eyes started shining. So let's talk through that.
I love that. Yeah, because it lights them up, right? And it's like sometimes and hopefully you don't even have to go through a degree. Like, let's say you're 38, 45, it's not like you have to now go enroll in a 4-6 year degree, but starting, it's what you're saying is, if you know Jack Frost and the monster, and how he said, I've been such a bad monster, but how do I change? And then I think Jack Frost says, you just start with taking one step and putting one foot in front of the other.
Of the other. Yep.
Yeah. And that's how you walk through the door, right? It's kind of like when you had that moment at college where you were looking at the interior design class. If you had listened, right, and just taken that one class, right? So starting to pay more and more attention to those moments of clarity, or like that intuition or something speaking to you, right? To pay attention, explore it a little bit.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a really good point in that to be, you don't have to completely go back and redo life. Right. For me, if I would have had the choice to maybe work in a corporate environment that there were designers that did interiors of blah, blah, blah. I could have chose to be around that. That could have been how I transformed to that world. Or once I had more of that realization as an older person. So yes, it doesn't have to be, I've got to go back now and get my interior design license.
Yeah. The puzzle come together from in different ways. And sometimes like just being open and having like mentors like yourself and seeing examples right outside of your, sometimes what you're seeing next to you, your team, or immediate, family or company where you're working. It can be, and this is why I love having conversations like this, right? You've had this journey and then you pivoted.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And how does it feel for you now to do what you're doing?
Oh, I love the coaching piece. Absolutely adore it. And on those days that are harder, that, in building a business, there's always the building part that you've got to do some of the stuff that you're not as good at.
Yeah.
Right. But when I realize that I have those pieces, I'm able to go out and say, okay, let me get an accountability partner that's high and strategic. Let me go out and find a vendor that actually enjoys putting graphic design pieces together. Let me go out and find somebody that does X, so that I can keep narrowing in and keep trying to do the things that I love best. And in fact, with me, a lot of what I do well is getting groups of people to move forward. So in a solopreneur position, I don't have a lot of that activity. However, then, for me to go out and volunteer or to put together a group program with other coaches, that's how I get some of that activity. But I know when it's missing, and I know to go out and find it, because I know that I'm not getting fed.
I love
So
that. And that all comes from you knowing yourself, right? Knowing what you need to thrive. And this is where it comes back to doing this work and knowing this. It's not always expecting that somehow your employer will be magically able to fulfill all that. Like, are we looking for too much from our employer, like to satisfy all these needs? Just like your life partner, right? Your sweetheart can't be everything, right? Can't fulfill, like they're only a person. The same thing with a job. And this is where really taking the power back. And I think this is a wonderful and amazing tool, the strength finders, and learning about yourself and then applying it, right? And playing around with it. This is where that fulfillment,
yes,
like,
yeah.
that's how you design a career.
Yeah, and it's well worth the effort. And it is one of those topics that nobody's going to make you do it.
Right.
Nobody's going to tell you you did a good job or a bad job. They don't know. Nobody's going to let you into a certain club because you did certain things. You have to do the work.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for people to understand, instead of all of us burying our head, which again, I did it for, I did it. I've been there. Um, it's really to put the effort in and to do it now, not to wait. Whatever age you are, just do it now and just go, what truly does make me happy? And, this life is short and it's long, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if anything, I mean, we're in this time, we're reminded that, especially about the first part, the short, the pandemic and everything going on, and right, being faced with people being faced with health challenges, and you really have to, like, the time is now. And I think that's what we are seeing, that people are feeling that urgency. That's why the age of the great resignation is happening.
Yes. And let's go back to when you know that 70% of people, the workers out there, are truly not engaged, which means basically they're truly not happy in what they're
Yeah.
doing. It's not feeding them. You can see why so many people are going, forget this. Let me go and find something that is going to make me happy, and quite honestly, I applaud that. I'm like, you know what, if you're not happy, it is time to take a look. And I think those are the perfect people to really explore this program.
Wow. This conversation that just touches my heart, touches my soul. So thank you so much, Kristin. Tell us, how can people find you? How can they work with you? How can they follow you?
Sure. And I make this easy. It's Kristin at kristinclark.com, and my website is kristinclark.com. And my phone number is all over. My Facebook is Kristin Clark Coaching. It's all my name. You go in and put my name, and I'm not the meteorologist that will pull up when when you go into the Google search. But if you put Kristin Clark or Kristin Clark Coaching, you will find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thank you.